Okay, in this video, we're going to solve question number 1 from chapter 10, hard questions. So the scenario goes, let the supply and demand curve for gallons of gasoline be the following. Price equals 2Q and price equals 12 minus Q. Treat each question as independent of each other. So the question says, suppose there is an external cost of $3 per gallon. Which of the following is a socially optimal outcome? Okay. So we'll first write down the equations. So demand is Q. Supply 2Q. And the external cost was $3 per gallon. This is the market for gasoline. And so each gallon that is consumed and produced results in a $3 external cost. So keep in mind that because it's an external cost, it is not internalized by the consumers or the producers. That's where the name external comes from. It's external to the transaction. All right. So we should first, looks like this disappeared. Oh, there it is. There we go. Okay, so I wonder why. Let's see if we can clean this up a little bit. I'm not sure why I did that. Okay. So first, as usual, we'll draw a picture. Okay. So here's our picture. And so at the equilibrium price and quantity, right? So if we very quickly do that calculation, and to finish our labeling, it might not be terribly necessary to make this calculation, but it's and easy to do. Okay, so we get that 4 is the equilibrium quantity, and then the equilibrium price will be $8. So it's 8 and 4. Okay, so this does not account for the external cost of $3. And so we know that because there's an externality, the market outcome, which is 8 and 4, $8 is the equilibrium price, 4 is the equilibrium quantity, is not going to maximize total welfare or social. It won't be this. It won't maximize social welfare. So welfare of the entire economy, right? Because we can see here that the total welfare is going to be equal to, if we look at the total surplus, it's going to be 12 minus 0 times 4, right? That gives us the big triangle, which is consumer surplus plus producer surplus. But then we have to subtract the negative externality. So 4 units are being consumed, or 4 gallons of gasoline is being consumed, but that comes with a $3 externality, external cost, right? I think we didn't complete this. So this is 12 minus 0 times 4 times 1 over 2, right? Because the triangle. Right, so the total surplus here will be 24 minus 12, and so this will equal 12. So we know that this is not the maximum surplus. So we know that the perfectly competitive market equilibrium maximizes total surplus, but that fails in the face of an externality, right? So what we do is we have to correct the externality by issuing what's called a corrective tax. This is sometimes also called a Pigovian tax, right? And the size of the corrective tax should be equal to the externality. In this case, it's $3. So the tax should be $3. So when the government issues this corrective tax, this increases the cost of the good for the consumers and producers, right? What this does is it forces the consumers and producers to internalize the externality. How do we show that on the graph? Well, just like we did when we talked about taxes, right? In this case, the supply curve represents private cost, right? The cost of producing the good, right? And demand represents value. What is the value of the good to the end user, right? So cost to the producer, value to the end user. Notice that we've left out everyone external to the transaction, but issuing the corrective tax forces the consumers that value the goods and the producers that produce the goods to internalize this additional cost. So because it's a corrective tax, we attack the cost side of the curve, right? So I'll put that in a different color and I'll put it red. All right. And this is, we can call this the social cost curve. I can call this the social cost curve. Right, and this supply curve, we could also call this the cost curve. And the demand curve we can call the private value curve. To really emphasize the point. So we know that we're going to shift this curve up the size of the tax. So the y-intercept of the social cost curve should be 3 because we shifted it up 3 units. Right? It was at the origin, now it's 3 units higher. So now the cost to the price to the consumer has increased, right, to whatever this. So now we have to find this new price. Additionally, the amount produced has decreased. This becomes the socially optimal equilibrium or socially optimal outcome, right? So notice that in the face of a negative externality, the market overproduces and overconsumes the good. And so the government has to come in and correct that overconsumption. And this new socially optimal outcome, in fact, will maximize surplus. So we can do this calculation. So to find this new equilibrium, we're finding the intersection of the demand curve and the social cost curve, or the red curve, right? So 12 minus Q, that's the demand, or the demand curve. And then the supply curve is now 2Q plus 3. And then we just do algebra. Okay. And so the new equilibrium quantity will be 3. And then the equilibrium price will be this is the socially optimal price and quantity. So there's the price. There's a quantity. And now we can look, we can check. So now that the externality has been internalized, it's no longer an externality, right? After the corrective tax, there is no external cost anymore because it's not external, right? It's been internalized due to the corrective tax. So now we can calculate the new total surplus, and we'll see that so 12 minus 3 is equal to 9 times 3 divided by 2, 13.5. And so you can see that this number here is bigger than this number here. And so in this case, in the face of an externality, the corrective tax improves welfare for the economy. Okay, so the question asks, which of the following was a socially optimal outcome? Well, the answer is quantity 3, price 9. And so the answer here should be A.